Okay, here is the outline of my presentation. I will talk briefly about the geography of departures of Bosnian foreign fighters. And after that, I will focus on the logistics of recruitment. And finally, I will discuss authority and power centers. Why? Because the argument I'm making today in this presentation is that no matter how individual departures of foreign fighters look, there is always a network of activities and actors who facilitate the departure and the arrival of fighters in the war zone. Let me give you a brief overview of the numbers of men, women, and minors of Bosnian origin who traveled to Syria and Iraq between 2012 and 2016. As you can see from this table, Bosnian Muslim fighters departed from different parts of the Balkan region, different countries. However, what I'm going to focus on in the next slides is the departures of Bosnian fighters only from Bosnia and Herzegovina. As you can see on this map, there were different routes preferred by Bosnian fighters to reach the final destination, namely the battlefield in Syria. The most preferred one was by plane from the airport in Sarajevo to Istanbul, Gaziantep in Turkey, then by land to the city of Kilis, where they were basically greeted by local guides and illegally transferred to the town of Azaz in Syria. The second preferred option was again from Sarajevo by plane to Turkey, and then by land through the city of Antakya, and then transferred to Bab al-Hawa in Syria. The least preferred option by Bosnian fighters was to take a car or go on a bus and use a land road through some of the neighboring countries like Serbia or Bulgaria to go to Turkey and then make their journey to Syria. On this map, you can see the entry points used by Bosnian foreign fighters to reach the battlefield. And as you can see, they basically remained in this zone, which was close to the entry points and participated in different activities in the battlefield. In the second part, I would like to talk about the logistics of recruitment. In a number of cases, people from across Bosnia performed the so-called internal hijra. They migrated to particular spots within the country where basically the Salafi community first established its core after the war. These were remote areas, villages, places where previously the Mujahideen were active during the Bosnian War. And what is interesting from the data is that noticeable number of individuals passed through these spots before going to Syria and performed the external hijra, the big journey to the battlefield. I'm giving two examples here. Basically, these are two families going to two different spots in Bosnia and performing internal and then external hijra by traveling to Syria. What is interesting is that in both cases, the father was first the one who would go to the battlefield and then will facilitate the travel of the mother and the children in the family. Talking about the logistics of this process, the internal hijra was facilitated by financial support for these people to buy land, to buy property, and to settle in these remote areas. At the second stage, when we talk about the external migration, they received, in some cases, financial support to go to Syria, buy tickets, and provide their families in the initial phase of the staying in the war zone. And now the logical question is who provided this support? So as you know, the data on financing of these activities is very insufficient to make conclusions, but I would like to spend a few minutes talking about authority and power centers in order to understand what is the role of people who were influential at the local level in terms of logistics. And by doing so, I would like to basically fill two gaps. When we talk about foreign fighters, we usually talk about people who go to the battlefield, and we focus less on the authority figures who might facilitate or support this journey in different ways. And the second gap is that we usually focus on the ideological functions of these authority figures, whereas there is interesting, actually, there are interesting details concerning the logistic support. Unfortunately, my research didn't manage to reach sufficient data concerning the financial support. But when it comes to logistics, for example, the two most influential leaders in the Bosnian foreign fighter recruitment process, Nusret Imamovic, who you see on the left side, he was initially in charge for the process of issuing the so-called letters of recommendation. Basically, these were some kind of documents issued to people who intended to travel to the war zone. Such confirmations were initially given by Imamovic until his departure to Syria, because he went to the battlefield himself. Later, this responsibility was taken by Hussein Bosnic. He was arrested in 2014, and according to data from local police and prosecution in Bosnia and Herzegovina, this process of giving permission was transferred to authority figures outside the country. Which brings me to my last point in this presentation, that when we talk about authority in foreign fighter recruitment and the further facilitation of this process and the arrival of fighters in the battlefield, there are different power centers. Some might be in the grassroots, some might be in the region where foreign fighters come from, but in other cases, they might be external to the region. When we talk about the Bosnian foreign fighters, the most influential external power center was situated in Vienna, in Austria, where a couple of very influential jihadi Salafi leaders with legacy in the Bosnian War were active in the recruitment of Bosnian foreign fighters. And the last point is that we have to make a distinction between those who basically were influential in the grassroots and those who went on the other side of the recruitment channel. In the Bosnian case, we can talk about people who were influential on the receiving side, or they were welcoming the arriving fighters, providing them with weapons, with trainings, and with information about their further actions and activities. I'm going to stop here, although I'm happy to share a lot of more interesting details, but I'm trying to keep my presentation within the time limit, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much.